Hey guys, in today's Book to Screen, I'm going to be talking about Dracula, starring Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, Jessica DeGao, Thomas Kretschmann, Victoria Smurfit, Oliver Jackson Cohen, Nonso Anansi, and Katie McGrath. The first season of Dracula was 10 episodes long and aired on NBC on Friday nights. And so a quick summary of what Dracula is about. Posing as an American entrepreneur, Dracula goes by the name of Alexander Grayson, and he arrives in London, England to bring modern science to that world. But this whole thing is one big cover-up. Grayson seeks to destroy members of this group that go by the name of the Order of the Dragon. And it is the Order of the Dragon who long ago killed Dracula's wife. And in the middle of all of this is a young woman by the name of Mina Murray, who Alexander Grayson falls madly in love with. And not only that, this woman looks exactly like his dead wife. Before I get going with the review, I'm going to warn you that there might be some minor spoilers in this, so if you have not seen the show, it might not be best to watch this entire video. Overall, I did really enjoy Dracula. I will admit, it had an incredibly slow start, and I don't even think it picked up until probably the last 3 episodes of the whole season. But I was determined to stick through the whole thing because I do love Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I was curious to see this adaptation for it, and to see what the show took from the book, which was very little. If you are a fan of Stoker's book Dracula, do not go into the television series thinking it's going to be some sort of exact replica, because it's not, if you cannot already tell from the brief summary I gave you. Really, all that's taken from the book is the characters' names, and then some kind of minor plot points, that if you've read the book, you'll be able to point those out. The characters are not 100% what they're like in the book either. They are radically different and altered. The big thing that I noticed is that the television series is really trying to make the viewer sympathize and root for Dracula, aka Alexander Grayson. Whereas in the book, you know, Dracula is totally the villain and you want him dead. The overall look of the show is really beautiful. It must have a really great budget or something, because the effects are pretty great, the surroundings, the scenery, everything that makes this world look like it's Victorian society, it's all there, and it's really great, and you feel really immersed into that. I did kind of have some issues with the costuming. Sometimes the costuming didn't seem very Victorian. I don't know if that was just me. The men often felt like they were in Victorian garb, but it was the women where it seemed like the costume designers wanted to kind of explore and develop and kind of give something a little different too, which was kind of distracting on occasion because some of the costumes were a little weird. I did really love Mina's clothes. I want to say they kind of kept Mina the most Victorian. I did adore her clothes. There's this like little blue outfit she wears with this little cute blue hat, and I was like, oh, I want that outfit. And then Lucy, I don't know what was up with her clothes. Sometimes Katie McGrath was able to pull the dresses off, sometimes she wasn't, sometimes they just kind of looked ugly on her. I don't know if it's just because I'm so used to seeing Katie McGrath and like really dark colors, and these bright colors were just too crazy for me. And then the character of Lady Jane, who's like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or something, her outfits were cool, but once again, they didn't look Victorian whatsoever, and it's like they were trying to really modernize her to make her look like this kick-ass female, and sometimes it's just kind of stupid. But yeah, effects overall were really fantastic. It's pretty gruesome sometimes. Arms would be getting chopped off, heads were being decapitated. I'm surprised that this was an NBC show. I have a feeling if Dracula had been picked up by like HBO or Starz or Showtime or something like that, then the show would have been a lot more graphic. It was already pretty graphic with all the like the beheadings and the biting, and And don't get me started on the sex scenes. I can't believe how much of the sex scenes they kind of were able to get on the air. Basically, if you watched The Tudors, where Jonathan Rhys-Meyers was Henry VIII in that, then he's kind of like the same thing in this, with all the sex and the women, and yeah. And so I'm going to kind of go off into the individual characters themselves. Overall, I felt the acting was really fantastic. Sometimes it was a bit cheesy, it just depended on what the line was, the scene. Other than that, though, everyone was really great. And I could see that they were really into their characters. So I'll start with Dracula, played by Jonathan Rhys-Meyers. I love Jonathan Rhys-Meyers. He's so good looking, and I think he was a perfect choice for Dracula. Jonathan Rhys-Meyers can really do that brooding essence and the sex appeal, and he really seemed menacing. Like I said in the summary, Dracula comes to London and he poses as an American entrepreneur named Alexander Grayson. And so, you know, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers is not American, and boy, was the American accent god awful. I hated the accent. Oh, it's so cringe-worthy. You would have the fantastic acting, but then under that you had his American accent, and it was so, ooh. But then when he would switch into like the British accent he was using, those were all great. I kept waiting for everyone to find out that he's not Alexander Grayson, and then he could stop using that American accent. But yeah, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, he was a great Dracula. Like I said, it was kind of just the accent, that was the American accent that was throwing me off and kind of annoying me on occasion. Then we have Jessica De Gaulle as Mina Murray. I really liked her as Mina. She was very sweet. Let's put it this way, she was basically a Mary Sue, and sometimes that got annoying on occasion because I really hate Mary Sues. Everyone seemed to love Mina, and I mean that's just how it's going to be in any sort of Dracula adaptation. Everyone's going to love Mina because you know what? It's like that in the book. Jessica De Gaulle, she was just the cutest little thing. I think she was a perfect Mina. You have Mina who, she's a very kind of polar opposite type of woman. She wants to kind of stay with these Victorian values, but then she also wants to be very modern with the medicine and being a doctor. And I think Jessica De Gaulle really pulled that off and really brought Mina together. And kind of going to Mina and Dracula, I think they had really fantastic chemistry together. I will say the kind of the insta-love that happened between them was just that. It was insta-love, and it kind of happened way too quickly for me. I can understand why Dracula had insta-love, because Mina reminded him of his dead wife, and so obviously he'd be having some emotional feelings for Mina. But Mina, it's like, Grayson kind of just walks into her life and she's like, oh, hi. And yeah, they do finally get together at the end of the season, and it's just kind of like, what? Wow, this is happening awfully quick. Because in some ways their connection felt gradual, but then sometimes it just felt so rushed. Then we have Thomas Kretschmann. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right. It might be Kretschmann or something. And he plays Abraham Van Helsing. And this is not the Hugh Jackman Van Helsing. The Van Helsing in the TV series is probably a bit more in tune with the book. Not so much exactly like the book, but probably maybe the 20% of the character in the show is like the book. I have been such a huge fan of Thomas Kretschmann for probably a good decade now. I've seen most everything he's been in, and I really feel like he's such an underrated actor, and so it's great to see him in this larger role. And I was really surprised how much Van Helsing we got throughout the season. And I'm just glad that they picked a German guy for this role instead of getting either an American or British guy and then doing a really bad or stereotypical German accent. And I love kind of this whole progression of Van Helsing from start to finish. At the beginning, he's working with Dracula because Dracula wants to get a cure so he can go out in the sunlight and be a normal man. And so Van Helsing is developing this little serum so he can do that. And then, you know, over the course of the season, things start happening, and Van Helsing and Dracula kind of eventually fall out. And so we end the season with Van Helsing in a very interesting place, a very dark place, and I'm very excited to see where that's going. The show ends and Van Helsing opens up like this little vampire slaying toolkit or something, and it looks like we're going to have a very kick-ass Van Helsing next season. Next, Victoria Smurfit as Lady Jane Weatherby, and this is the character I hated the freaking most, you guys. I have never disliked a character so much. I don't know what it was about Lady Jane that irked me and just really crawled under my skin. Just as soon as she popped up on the screen, I just instantly felt that, and I don't really know why. I don't know if it's just she's a character that wasn't in the books and I just didn't have a connection to her. It wasn't the acting. I think the acting was just fine. Like I said earlier about the acting, everyone is fantastic in this. But as far as characters, I did not like her character at all. She was like this Buffy the Vampire Slayer ripoff, and just, I think, too overly kick-ass and too overly trying to rise above the men and rise above her station. I mean, this is Victorian society, and it was just a little annoying that this woman, you know, just kind of out of her place, and it just didn't seem right. She was the total opposite of Mina, who is the very essence of Victorian values. So, spoiler alert, Lady killed at the end of the season. I was like, thank you. Because I did not want to see her go into another season. I don't know if it was just all the stuff, it was annoying. I didn't like her relationship with Dracula at all. I didn't get it. I was tired of the continuous sex scenes between them. I just kept thinking, I want to see Lucy, I want to see Katie McGrath, but we'll get to her in a minute. Next is Oliver Jackson Cohen, who plays Jonathan Harker, and good God, that man is hot. I have such mixed feelings about Jonathan, it's not even funny. You know, in the book, Jonathan is the very first character we meet. Jonathan is on his way to Transylvania to deal with Dracula's castle in Transylvania, and to help him, you know, get his new home going or something. And in the book, Jonathan, you know, he kind of gets PTSD in some ways, because he gets so traumatized by his stay at Castle Dracula, and he's very weak by the end of the book in some ways, because it's Van Helsing and characters like Dr. Seward and Quincy and Arthur who kind of take the lead, and then Jonathan kind of falls back in some ways. But yeah, in the show, like I said, I had very mixed feelings about Jonathan. When the show starts off, I really love Jonathan. I was so excited to see Jonathan and that whole relationship with Mina, because I ship Mina and Jonathan. I don't really ship Mina and Dracula, and I never have really done that, even in like other book adaptations or TV adaptations or movies. And stuff just starts happening, and Jonathan he kind of turns into a very weak and pathetic character, much more weak and pathetic than what he is in the book. And he just starts to turn on Mina, and just he finds out about Mina and Grayson's relationship, and then he starts to join up with the Order of the Dragon people, and they really turn him into a villainous character, which was very interesting, and I didn't really know what to think about that, because part of me likes this alternative Jonathan, but then part of me kind of doesn't like it. Either way, the man's hot. I hope they don't kill him eventually. I have a feeling Jonathan's gonna be going sometime soon to make way for the whole Dracula and Mina thing, which is a shame. Next we have Nonso Anansi, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correct too, and he plays Renfield. In the book, Renfield is like this madman. Dr. Seward is running like this mental asylum, and Renfield is one of the patients at the asylum. Well, guess what? Renfield he's a perfectly sane man in this TV adaptation. He's like Grayson's manservant of sorts. And Renfield basically kind of does all of Dracula's dirty work throughout the day, since Dracula can't travel through sunlight. Renfield was probably the easiest character to like. He was the most likable character out of the entire cast, and I think that says a lot. And poor Renfield, he goes through so much crap over the course of the season. He gets tortured by the Order of the Dragon at one point, and then right at the very end, Van Helsing stabs him, and we don't know if he's dead or not. I kind of hope he's not dead, because I really liked his character so much. And, we didn't see a final shot of him just lying there dead, so I have hope. Last, we have Katie McGrath as Lucy Westenra. And Lucy is probably one of my next favorite characters, even though she wasn't shown that much over the course of the season, which I was incredibly disappointed about, because I really started watching Dracula for Katie McGrath. I loved Katie McGrath in Merlin, and I've seen her in a couple other things here and there. So I was really excited to see Katie McGrath in this as Lucy, and I think that was a perfect character for her to play. As you know, Katie McGrath typically has really dark black hair, and in this she goes blonde, which was very interesting. And Lucy is a socialite. She's very gossipy and social and girly in some ways. But in some ways this is kind of her cover-up, because guess what? In this adaptation of Dracula, Lucy is a lesbian. Now, if you have read the book, there has been debate among scholars, and I mean, you can read this in the subtext of the book if you want. There's always these questions if Mina and Lucy are lesbians, and you can read that. It is perfectly alright to read that in the story, because there are these sexual undertones. So I kind of really liked how the show played with this idea of making Lucy a lesbian, because it kind of made sense. And I wasn't shocked when it happened, when Lucy finally came out to Mina and said, "Hey, I like you." It did not shock me one bit, because I was totally expecting it. I really love the course of Lucy's story throughout this first season. I was really hoping she would turn into a vampire by the end of the season. And you know, in the book, Lucy, she gets turned into a vampire, but then, you know, she basically kind of dies like a couple chapters later. And so I had a feeling the show wasn't going to kill Lucy like how she goes in the book. Like, she's at least going to last for another season, I'm thinking, and cause some havoc and get back at Mina and Jonathan and Grayson. I really just love the scene where Grayson does turn her, because he, you know, Lucy was kind of really being mean and spiteful to Mina because Mina didn't return her affections. And Lucy ends up sleeping with Jonathan to kind of get back at her. And so I love kind of Lucy's manipulative nature and everything. And then when Grayson hears about this, Lucy's in the tub taking her bath, and Grayson comes up, and before he bites her, he says, "You want to play the monster? I'm going to make you into a monster." And then he bites her, and it was just, oh, that was a fantastic moment, and the moment that I was waiting for the entire season. I was literally jumping around going, yes! So that's it for all the individual characters. Basically, what I want more of going into season 2 is Lucy and Van Helsing. Those are the two characters, and I'm really excited to see their story develop and grow. I'm really glad Lady Jane is gone, so I don't have to put up with that next season. I'm really hoping they give Katie McGrath more to do next season, because she was barely even in this season. She probably had like 5 minutes like every episode. I'm also very curious where Jonathan is going to go. It ended with him going to team up with Van Helsing, like they're going to go fight some vampires and slay them. So I'm really excited where that Van Helsing and Jonathan story is going to go. And then, as much as I kind of do like the Dracula and Mina thing, I think that story is very predictable, and I kind of know where that's going. And like I said, the whole show is really basically building up Dracula, Grayson, to be the anti-hero and the person that you are rooting for and sympathizing with, and they're basically making all the other characters villains, which is kind of interesting. I think that's all I have to say. If you happen to watch the TV series, please talk to me about it. Do you have different opinions from me? Did I leave something out? I would love to talk about it with you. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.